some great news on the Cardano zoomed out bull market charts for all ADA holders. And if you are an ADA holder on the short term, caution, patience, deep breath, hang in there. I want to talk about price action that might be in store for ADA holders. We're getting there, but there could be some volatility. Dog on the macro, warning, massive warning to all of crypto. This is the only meme coin that matters this cycle, in my view. I know there's others that matter to many of you, but in terms of what's happening on the dog chart, the number one meme coin on Bitcoin, it's been time to pay attention, but right now is a very good time to pay attention. So warning to the bulls on the short term, a throwback in play. Hit the subscribe, hit the like on the way in. Let's just jump into it. So ADA on the monthly, I just want to start here. We're going to go to the weekly, and then I want to talk about this chart, and then the daily, the kind of caution. But on the monthly, everybody, do you understand? I try to be very objective. I try to be very unemotional in these markets. But when we're getting moves like this, it's very tough not to get a little bit kind of hype and a little bit optimistic here. This is a monthly candle, but it's not only what it looks like, this wick down to the 20-month moving average, especially when we start looking at last cycle, right? Kind of this consolidation right here above the 20-month moving average. What actually gets me so optimistic is what this wick represents. The markets, and I'm not just talking about crypto, traditional markets just went through a record-breaking high fear volatility move. And this is how Cardano handled it. That's what that is. This is incredibly meaningful if you're a macro long-term investor. Now, putting that aside for a moment, what's actually taking place in here? There's multiple things. On the macro, I think altcoins are getting ready and they're setting up their consolidation before a very nice bull market. On the more zoomed in, we start getting a sense of the volatility that might be involved in that setup. But I wanted to go on the weekly chart, and I said this is great news for ADA holders. I want to show you why. This inverse head and shoulders that we've really kind of been tracking for quite some time now because of the similar structure last cycle before the bull market. I want to speak to something in regards to the inverse head and shoulders. If you notice the head of this inverse head and shoulders, this wick of this candle back here in August 2024, another high fear environment, do you notice how it is higher than the left shoulder? So technically that invalidates an inverse head and shoulders. A textbook head and shoulders would have the head being the lowest point between the left and the right shoulder. But I really want to say, in terms of technical analysis, and one of the things that I've learned over the years, you're not going to have structured setups that are always perfect. That's not how real markets act. So if that's the case, and then I want to show you what happened back here in that last setup, but if that's the case, what is important here in this inverse head and shoulders? If I'm saying it's validated and in play right now, what's important? And what's important for me is the story of the pattern. Every pattern has a different story, whether that's, a symmetrical triangle, whether it's some type of falling channel. Every pattern has a story. In this regard, the story here is a story of the bears and the bulls, right? So a left shoulder and an inverse head and shoulder is the bears stepping in, the bulls stepping into a neckline. The bear stepping in again even more strongly, the bull stepping into a neckline. The bear stepping in again in the right shoulder, giving it one last shot, which I think we've seen the bears do, and then the bulls stepping in finally to win. That would be the inverse head and shoulders play out. That story is playing out. So the head is not lower than the left shoulder. But I wanted to go back and I wanted to kind of validate this point. Look at this structure last cycle. The one thing on all these charts, not just ADA, that's just crazy to me is if COVID never happened, I always just wonder what the charts would have looked like. We were getting a really nice move out of the bear market low. Would have ADA just kind of consolidated back to moving averages, a higher low, and just kind of done what it did? And if that was the case, guess what? Then we would have had a head of this same type of structure that we're getting over here, which was higher than the left shoulder. So that would have been invalidated. right? So my point is the story of a bear market bottom and the pivot from a bear market to a bull market, from a structural standpoint for ADA, the story back then is so similar to the story right now. And I think this inverse head and shoulders pattern illustrates the story very well. So I'm going to continue using that. Now, the great news on this chart is the very fact that if we're really comparing these moves, and we've been doing a lot of that lately, is we are in that that right shoulder setup. Now, here's the deal. The great news is on the RSI. It's on this momentum oscillator. Look at where ADA is right now. We are putting in a higher low in terms of the momentum, the slower moving momentum of ADA. And if we look at where ADA is consolidating on the RSI right now compared to last cycle, we are right here at the same exact moment. This is to say the entire bull market move for ADA has not happened yet. And that's phenomenal news, right? When we're really starting to dig into the technicals and the structure that's happening. Now, what I want to really make note of for ADA holders, especially in the short term, then we're going to get into this crazy move on the dog charts that's happening right now. It's this. Right now, we're going to use moving averages to anticipate maybe some potential volatility and pain on the shorter term. We have the 20-day moving average, or I should say the 50 and the 20 crossing below the 200. This move just kind of happened very recently. If you go back on the ADA charts and you kind of look at, well, when did similar moves happen, right? ADA tests kind of in between those areas before actually pivoting out. And it tests between those areas multiple times, right? So right now we're getting our first test between, or I should say below the 200-day moving average and above the 20 and the 50. So you can see how long it took there. That was the head of the inverse head and shoulders. And you can see even back here, right? It took a little bit less time, but needless to say, it took some time. Even just look at this. That first swing high, resistance at the 200, and then lower, right? So my point is, what if we get in a very similar move, we're getting this first resistance swing high, we're going to go lower, consolidate before the true breakout. If we take a fractal over here and look at what that could potentially look like, just check it out. This is just a very simple warning, something that I think is only useful. There's no downside in anticipating moves like this. Of course, we want to break out. Of course, we want to see ADA not do this and actually just maybe it consolidates just very briefly below the 200-day moving average here, and then it actually breaks out. Of course, we want to. But I'm just saying, in terms of how ADA trades and altcoins trade, guess what? Moves like this are in play. More bottoming out is in play. Now, I really want to highlight something here, and then we're going to look at dog. There's one thing that might not have this happen. I mean, at the very least, we want to look for the 20-day, maybe a throwback to the 20-day moving average into the 60s. We might get back down there to test that area again, right, before maybe breaking out. But M2 global liquidity. If we're tracking here, yes, maybe there's a little bit of a short-term consolidation. Maybe we're falling in the 60s, seeing the moving average support. But we might not have this even short-term, kind of like a longer short-term pain in play, the one that I just visualized, like we're choppy, we're down, right? We might be breaking out sooner than later. So that's also some great news for ADA bulls, even on the short term, because we're all tracking these M2 global liquidity index charts, and it is leading indicator for crypto market. So be prepared, but at the same time, just understand where we are in the cycle in terms of ADA, where we are in terms of the macro resistance. I didn't even talk about the bull market doors because I just did a video on it. But again, look at that resistance at the 200 week moving average. That's happening right now. We still have 1 day, 8 hour left of the weekly chart. Let's see how it closes. But no surprise that ADA is struggling at 71 cents. We've been anticipating this entire move. Let's go to dog. So I want to do the warning to the bears on the macro. And then again, similar to ADA, caution to the dog holders on the short term. it's definitely, it's hype right now. This is awesome. Let me start with the caution to the bears, and then we'll look at the caution to the bulls on the short term. Caution to the bears is this. I just did a video the other day, and I think this is exactly how I left the chart. I was talking about, where dog price was at the moment. I was talking about dog just reaching where Doge is now before a bull market even starts for altcoins. If dog gets to $26 billion market cap, which again, I think is possible. This is the number one meme coin on Bitcoin. And in my view, this is the number one meme coin in the crypto space. Trillions are going to pour into Bitcoin. There have been no tier one listings. This move on dog is in play. I'm just saying, the other day, it was a 13,000+% gain within a matter of days, everybody. Look at this. It is now, from where price is, a 9,400%. Just like that, a 4,000% opportunity is gone. So opportunity, when it comes to plays like this, they go by very fast, because watch this. If dog makes another powerful move, maybe in the days, maybe in the weeks ahead, all of a sudden we're just back at $500 million market cap. Nothing crazy. Now it's a 5,000% move. So within a very short time frame, we're going from 13,000% potential to boom, if you want to get on now, or all the way up here at 500 million, 5,000% potential. So these markets move fast. This applies to all of crypto. And I'm just saying, right now, what's happening on dog is of no surprise to me. And so I've been waiting with all altcoins, as well as dog, for the altcoin bull market, right? And so that requires pain. It just is what it is. I've been through these cycles. It was anticipated. And if many of you out there on the long term, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is what it is. But that does not mean the opportunity has faded or gone away. If anything, it got stronger for many people down there. Now, the warning to the bulls on the short term is this. We talk a lot about bull market, macro, just insane gains. Let's be careful. We have a 20-day, which is a phenomenal move after all of these months of downside. The 20-day is looking to make a move above the 50-day moving average. Last time we had that happen was back here. Vincent, I believe, Cryptolution, has been talking a lot about this move. Go follow him if you're a dog holder and you're not following him already. But look at this, 20-day above the 50 back here. That was the bottom. We made our way to the $1 billion. But here's the difference. M2, global supply, just ramping up, right? And here it is overlaid on dog, just to give you an idea. What happens for dog in this context? If we're going to get an altcoin bull market, $1 billion, I think I was probably saying it back here as the starting line. I still think it is. So dog has to get there, but here's the caution for the bulls on the shorter term. Notice what happened when we had the 20-day cross above the 50 back here, make a nice move to almost 500 million, and then boom, falling back down to 300 million to revisit those moving averages. That move, I think, is coming. I don't know how high this current breakout will go. Would really, as much separation as possible is always what I say, is what we want to see. But in the coming days even, be very careful for a very big throwback to the moving average areas. The 50, the 20. I mean, we could be back into the 100 some $1 million market cap for dog. And people will be like, it was over. It was a fake out. But it's not. I don't think it would be over just the same as this wasn't over, right? It's just consolidation. It's just people taking profit. It's just crazy volatility on meme coins. This is what meme coins do. So anticipate moves like that, especially as we're getting very meaningful macro moves, macro pivots, and macro reversals like this one. These throwbacks happen a lot. So upside for dog on the macro, I'm just saying, be careful, bears. I see bears in the comments nonstop through all these months of pain, and it's fine. Say what you're going to say, because I think I know what is going to happen to dog if we get a crypto bull market. And I'm very excited about it. This is part of my thesis. This is why dog is such a huge part of my portfolio. So those are my thoughts on Cardano and dog today. I hope you're having a good weekend. I appreciate you cruising through. I really do. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe, turn notifications on. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that like button. I appreciate your support. I'll see you in the next video. God bless.